Man, this chapter has it all. Sukuna Heian Era Flashback, Yorozu lore, more Heian Era lore, regarding the Fujiwara clan, more Uro lore, Sukuna summoned the Mahoraga, and then finally more Megumi. However, you're probably not gonna like that part of Megumi. However, do you know what you will like? Subscribing to this channel for more Jujutsu Kaisen content because, you know, it's good karma and it increases PP size. I'm just saying, that's just what I hear at the grapevine anyway. But the new chapter is now here, and it opens up with giving us some juicy Heian Era flashback lore. And honestly, I'd have loved for GEGE to give us a full dedicated segment and a couple of chapters of this Heian Era flashback. However, I'm also very okay with being this drip-fed little tidbits of information throughout the series as and when it's needed. However, I did call it the other day saying that this chapter and this event, this fight between Sukuna and Yorozu, is the perfect opportunity for GEGE to give us some Heian Era lore and loving with this Sukuna and Yorozu fight, especially with their past and their history that's going on right now. However, I will admit to one thing. Yorozu is absolutely batshit crazy. Literally batshit crazy. It's actually insane how crazy this woman is. But the chapter opens up with a flashback from the Heian Era, and we see some random nameless folk here talking about how there is a harvest festival soon here. And they're talking about why having a monster be invited to the festival is happening. And I can only assume that they are talking about Sukuna here. But the other guy then goes on to talk about how it's worse, how they have to pray to Sukuna for a plentiful harvest. And then goes on to mention how the Celestial Squad and the 5 Void Generals that were all subjugation squads of the Fujiwara clan were all sliced to pieces by him. Those names sound familiar, then they should, because they've actually popped up quite a few times now. The first time was when Takako Uro was introduced in the Culling Games. She was the leader of the Celestial Squad, which now explains why she was actually so fucking terrified of Sukuna's presence when he was turning up. Basically, Merc Ryu in one shot, or technically 2 shots, but whatever. And it actually turns out that Sukuna must have been the cause of her death in a previous life, and will probably most likely be caused in this generation as well. So you can call that basically being a generational hater. Sukuna is on that level. He was that black Air Force energy, and he wants that schmokage. But then the second time that they popped up was actually in the previous chapter when Yorozu used her insect armor. It was mentioned how she took down a squad that stood equal to the Celestial Squad of Uros, which kind of hinted at putting Yorozu and Sukuna on the same sort of level. And I said that a few times in live streams and other videos that I thought that Yorozu actually had more up his sleeve. And unfortunately, I have to take an L on that little take right there, because from this chapter, it turns out that she is actually still just Sukuna fodder and has literally fuck all up her sleeve for that one. And he actually just bodies her not just once, but twice. So I have to take a general L on that one. But these 2 random dudes then go on to say how they have no choice but to pray to Sukuna, because they need to show him that they harbor no ill will to him and they want to maintain an amicable relationship with him. And again, just basically tells you how much of a menace Sukuna is, that these men back then had to literally pray to him as if he is some sort of deity, god. And they basically just want to live a peaceful life. And again, it goes back to that statement of Sukuna is the honored one and everything else just exists for his pleasure and displeasure. Sukuna is simply him. It's at this point that Yorozu is shown to us in a Heian Era form, and it turns out this one is actually very, very allergic to any sort of clothes, and he's just strolling around the town butt naked, which is kind of weird how most media, if they want to portray someone as crazy, they just show that person naked or having a disregard for lack of clothes. It's kind of funny. It's like, fuck you, societal norms. I'm crazy. I'm literally batshit, and I'm gonna get naked now. Turns out Yorozu is in some sort of upstanding position here, and it's not clear if she's whether like been appointed royalty here or is just given her status due to destroying the subjugation squads of the Fujiwara here. But she has a servant who is begging her to put clothes on because of the festival, and the only reason Yorozu agrees is because there will be some tasty snacks known as Kakeru Damono. I hope I've just butchered that name. She gets all excited and leaves her home to go and get some of these, and as she leaves her building, she is confronted with Sukuna in all of his Heian Era glory. 4 arms, 4 eyes, 2 faces, and this man is massive. He is sat down, and like, I don't know if the proportions are all out of whack, but this dude is sat down and is literally nearly the same size as Uraumi. Apparently, it was confirmed that this dude is 9 foot, which again is actually massive. But Yorozu goes on over to sprint Sukuna here and literally runs and hugs him. And I have to say, I am actually shocked that she even made it this far before she didn't just get sliced into pieces. But I do also got to laugh because when Sukuna is hugged by Yorozu here, his face is just just that of no thoughts, just vibing, an absolute menacery. There's just no expression on his face at all. But Uraumi interferes and tells Yorozu to get off him and calls her a lackey and freezes Yorozu's arm here from the looks of it. And Yorozu responds with basically no you, and also calls her a lackey. And then Yorozu keeps going on about how Sukuna isn't alone anymore. And honestly, if I wasn't already clear about this, these comments, Yorozu is batshit crazy, like literally batshit insane, truly batshit insane. This woman truly believes she is on Sukuna's level and that he is no longer alone anymore because she is also on his level and is also there for him now. And honestly, low-key, she had my dumb ass fooled because I genuinely thought she had a technique that was just getting ready to wipe Sukuna out. We'll get into that whole debacle in a minute right there. But Yorozu then jumps away from Sukuna and Urami's attack and starts spouting some random nonsense. And then she finally realizes that she's been sliced. And I want to point out that Sukuna didn't even move. This man didn't even blink an eye. He didn't flick any wrists, no swish and flick, no Wingardium Leviosa. This dude just didn't even move at all. He just sliced her up the middle and away with ye. So yeah, Sukuna is him. But Yorozu being killed here is actually very interesting, because if Yorozu dies here, then that raises the question of how Kenjaku made the binding vow with her to bring her into the modern era. And my two theories here are, number one, Kenjaku made the vow prior to her death and might have even been the one who appointed her to the position that she's in now. A lot of people, I think, speculating that the person who Uro was so angry with was actually Kenjaku, who might have been the head of the Fujiwara clan at the same time. And then number two is Kenjaku used the Chaos Realm to speak to her post-death and made the vow there. We saw the Chaos Realm at the beginning of the Cullen games here, where he's leading one of Yuji's school friends through basically dreams, and he's speaking to her and interacting to her. So maybe he'd done the same thing with Yorozu here, which would make a very interesting point, and it would make the Chaos Realm an even bigger plot point to explore for GEGE. But again, if the series is ending this year, you then just start getting into the point of we're just adding a lot here to try and get into and explain. But we see Yorozu die in the Heian era and come back around to the modern era, and Yorozu here uses a technique called Perfect Sphere, which is a sphere so perfect that its surface area cannot be touched, and it generates an infinite amount of pressure. Now, if I had to take a guess here, I would say it looks as if her sphere does the same sort of thing as Gojo's Hollow Purple, because it looks to me as if it is literally erasing matter from the floor where it's touching, and I think that in and of itself is actually just a kind of wild feat of power here. So I was kind of half correct that Yorozu has something powerful able to somewhat compete with Sukuna, which I think is kind of fun, but again, it was kind of useless, because when I say that Yorozu did have something up her sleeve, and it seems that this technique is strong, she then activates her domain expansion, and Yorozu even saying in here that if she activated her Shoho effect, Sukuna would disappear. However, I'm not going to take Yorozu's word for this, because considering she is literally fucking batshit insane, but I will go on to say that this perfect fear seemed to be erasing the very ground it was touching, so that has to count for something in and of itself. But Sukuna is just stood there inside this domain, just vibing, not doing anything, just observing the scenery. Yorozu starts to panic about why he isn't activating his domain, why he's not countering anything here, and it's at this point, you know, we realize that Sukuna's actually doing something a lot worse. Remember that wheel above Sukuna's head there? Yeah, that starts turning. The Mahoraga wheel starts turning, and Sukuna summons the Mahoraga, and he grabs the wheel and drops it into the shadows, and that is where we see the Mahoraga is stood underneath Yorozu's domain here with a nice big smile on its face, using its sword of extermination to break the barrier, and then slices into Yorozu. Sukuna's use of the Mahoraga here is actually kind of insane. In a previous video, I theorized that Sukuna could have summoned separate parts of the Mahoraga and used them individually, which is basically what happens here. So it seems Sukuna having that wheel there above his head just floating there helps him adapt to any techniques that Sukuna is experiencing without actually having to summon the Mahoraga. So it seems that when he does summon the Mahoraga, it can just one-shot its opponents, and that is actually crazy. But this chapter also kind of confirmed that Sukuna has basically tamed the Mahoraga, because it disappears after it slices Yorozu here, and I know I've seen a lot of discourse on Twitter about this, so here's my take on this matter. What if Sukuna tamed the Mahoraga through the sheer amount of cursed energy that he has and possesses? What if that's all it took to tame the Mahoraga? We already know that the Shikigami from the Ten Shadows technique can be influenced with cursed energy, and we know this because when Sukuna summoned knew, that boy was Mahusif. That boy looked like fucking Mothra. He was a big motherfucker. And we can only assume that that happened because of Sukuna's massive cursed energy reserves. So what if all it took to tame the Mahoraga was just Sukuna having way more cursed energy than it and was able to just influence his will and dominion over it that way? Something that Megumi lacked, which I think is very much food for thought considering what we've seen so far. I think it kind of explains it a little bit. But Sukuna explains that he had already adapted to Yorozu's technique here, and Yorozu's reply is basically, wow, you know me so well. And again, Sukuna was just staring at this woman like, god damn, you are really fucking insane. But this is where the interesting part is here. I have to correct myself because on my spoiler stream, I said that Yorozu wasn't making anything for Sukuna and it was actually just her glove disappearing after she is like passing away. But now that we have the translations here, it seems I was completely and utterly wrong, and it seems that Yorozu is actually going to make something for Sukuna here out of her construction technique, but we don't know what it is yet, which is, again, a very interesting point in and of itself. But Yorozu goes on to say here, take this, think of it as me and always cherish it. Now, we don't know if this is some sort of weapon or something entirely else, but Yorozu is making something for Sukuna with her last breaths, similar to Mai and Maki here. And this is where it cuts to Megumi, who has sunken completely to the bottom of Sukuna's soul here, and his eyes are completely and utterly glazed over, and he seems to be crying. And the ending caption reads, after taking his sister Sumiki's life, Fushiguro's soul sinks into the abyss. Now, this was an interesting panel because I theorized a while back that Sukuna's plan to kill Sumiki could have gone one of two ways. Number one, he kills Sumiki and completely sinks Megumi forever and we never see him again. That's it. GG, finito. He's gone skis. Or number two, he kills Sumiki and it backfires. Instead of Megumi's soul being broken even further, he finally surges into one final pit of rage and takes over Sukuna and manages to suppress him either permanently or temporarily during that fit of rage. But what is most interesting here to me is the light above Megumi, and I interpreted this at first as if there is still hope for Megumi. He can see the light, so therefore there is still a chance. It seems sort of symbolic, but again, this just may not even be the case at all. It could be the case that the light that we see facing Megumi here is about to go out completely, and that is it. It's just GG. Megumi is gone forever. Finito. But that is everything from me. Overall, I thought this was a banger of a chapter. As far as I'm concerned, I'd rate it a solid 8.5, maybe a 9 out of 10. Genuinely very happy with this chapter. But let me know what you think of the chapter in the comments down below. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel, as it really does help me out. And as always, I'll catch you guys all in the next one. Much love. Big kisses. Peace.